This video is sponsored by Squarespace. More about them later. I did a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Emerald where every move has only one single power point. That means that a Pokémon can only use each of their 4 moves once per battle before being forced to struggle their way to the end of the match. In a Nuzlocke, if a Pokémon faints, it's dead forever, and I can only catch the very first Pokémon I find on each route. For a run like this, there's only one logical starter choice, and that's everyone's favorite amphibian, Mudkip. In our very first battle against Professor Birch's assailant, we see that all of Mudkip's moves do indeed only have a single power point. We also immediately glean some pretty insightful nuggets of wisdom that we'll need to carry throughout our adventure. 1. Inaccurate moves are extremely risky in this playthrough, since if they miss even once, they're a complete waste of a move slot. And 2. With enough juice, Struggle is a surprisingly effective offensive option against the right targets. For example, at 50 base power, Struggle is actually significantly better than Tackle, despite the minimal recoil damage we take as a result. A few trips on the Struggle bus later, and Mudkip has beaten the first of their many adversaries. So I named the little blue devil Peter, and just like that, our adventure begins. On our way to the first gym in Rustboro City, the team fills up with the usual suspects you see in an Emerald Nuzlocke. A Poochyena named Polly, a Wingull named Penelope, a Meryl named Pepper, and a Shroomish named Paul. I'm kinda stunned that I didn't find a single Wurmple on any of these routes, but I'm not complaining because these are all phenomenal encounters against Roxanne's rock types. Well, except Polly, but you get the idea. As we exit Petalburg Woods, I come upon easily the most important asset of this run, Leppa Berries. When used as a held item, these beautiful little berries will restore the PP of a single move 1 time per battle. It might not seem like much, but believe me, in this playthrough, it goes a long way. And with the expert gardening skills passed down to me by my Uncle Jim Tendo, I can get an effectively limitless supply of these little Leppa berries. Now the downside is that I can't choose which move gets restored by the Leppa berry, so it's only ever the very first move I use with each Pokemon. But that's still extremely useful, as you can see in the fight against Roxanne. Pepper the Meryl is able to get a clean one-shot against her first Geodude with a quad-effective Water Gun. Then as the second one comes out, our held Leppa berry restores Water Gun's single power point, allowing Pepper to score another free KO. But as Nosepass comes in last, now we've got to rely on Pepper's other moves. First is a Tail Whip, as Nosepass lands a decently strong Rock Tomb, which lowers our speed, letting Nosepass move first on the following turn to set up a Harden before Pepper uses her single defense curl PP, which means we're now down to our 4th and final move, Rollout. Rollout is a move that doubles in power after each successive turn. This does lock the user in for up to 5 turns, which means Pepper won't be able to switch out, but since an entire full 5 turns of Rollout only uses a single power point, I decide that it's worth the risk. After our first turn, Nosepass uses Block, meaning that even if Pepper misses any of her 90% accurate rolls and her rollout ends, she still won't be able to switch out and will instead have to resort to using Struggle. One way or another, this showdown just became to the death. Which is especially scary because Roxanne's got an arsenal of healing items, which activate after Pepper's 3rd roll leaves Nosepass with a sliver. A held Oranberry into a potion brings Nosepass back to nearly full HP as Pepper manages to connect with a 4th rollout that just barely misses out on the KO. We were so close. As Roxanne heals with her 2nd potion, I hold my breath. A miss here on Pepper's final maximum roll, and she's a goner. She'll be forced to struggle her way to the gates of hell as the first death of the run. But Pepper connects with her 5th rollout, instantly killing Nosepass, and single-handedly winning us the very first gym badge of the run. Fun fact, using Defense Curl doubles the power of Rollout, so that final hit after 4 turns of doubling damage had a base power of 960. I'm pretty sure that is quite literally the strongest move in the entire series. Pepper is a god. Nay, Pepper is the god. With that, we can make our way to Dewford Town completely deathless. It's a pleasant surprise to be sure, but our team's not exactly optimal for the matchup against Brawly's fighting types. They all know Bulk Up, which means that without a way to quickly take them out, we could very easily find ourselves on the road to ruin, despite knowing exactly what we're doing. I decide that it's best to get a few more encounters, starting first by fishing up Parker the Magikarp and Paula the Tentacool. Then in Granite Cave, I catch a timid but gutsy Makuhita named Paulina, though none of these new recruits really help out with our current problem. So, after delivering Mr. Stone's letter to Steven, I have Mr. Briny escort me to Slateport City, where I beeline to Route 110 in the hopes of catching something, anything that will improve my chances of not getting completely crushed by Brawly's juiced up children. I end up finding Patrick the Gulpin, an adamant little fella who at the very least resists fighting type attacks and can put something to sleep with yawn. Definitely could be worse. As the battle begins, I'm pretty worried. Our only way to hit our enemies for super effective damage is with Wing Attack from Penelope, who's not exactly a first-round draft pick when it comes to physical offense. Against Machop, I lead with Peter, now a Marshtomp. We can outspeed to get off a Mud Shot, which does solid damage before we tank a low kick. Unfortunately, without a Lepa Berry, we can't go for a Nether, instead needing to use Water Gun, which comes up just short of the KO. The reason I opted for no Lepa Berry is because Peter knows Growl, which I wanted to have at 0 PP, so that if Peter was forced to face off against Brawly's Meditite, he wouldn't be able to get off a Focus Punch on the turn that I was forced to use my Growl PP. But the result is that this allows Brawly to heal with his first Super Potion, meaning that Peter is completely out of moves after using his single Mud Slap PP. So I gotta switch to Penelope on a low kick that misses thanks to the accuracy drop. Our Wing Attack once again brings Machop into the red as we also dodge a Seismic Toss. Before taking the kill though, I need to burn Penelope's Growl PP, letting Machop go for another Seismic Toss that this time does connect for the anticipated 16 damage. But after that, Water Gun finally gets the KO and brings in Meditite. And with Penelope's Supersonic PP used up before the start of the battle, all we gotta do is slowly whittle away at Meditite with Struggle. Since his only way to deal damage is with Focus Punch, as long as I keep struggling, he can't hit us. As silly as this seems, this matchup is unlosable because we're guaranteed to have enough HP to survive our struggle recoil, even after Brawly uses his second and final Super Potion. As we struggle away at Meditite, minutes, hours, and days go by. Remnants of my life before this fight slowly fade away until all I know is struggle. But just as I start to feel my sanity dissolve past the point of no return, Meditite falls, and Brawly is left with his scariest Pokemon, Makuhita. I switch to Paul as he immediately goes for a bulk up. Not good. But what is good is that Paul connects with a Leech Seed that starts draining this guy of his HP. Less good is Makuhita going for yet another bulk up because now this guy is at +2 attack and defense. And it gets worse because as I switch to Patrick, Makuhita goes for a third bulk up. Admittedly, this might not have been my best plan, but a yawn means that Makuhita will be asleep soon. After a +3 Vital Throw does 25 damage and Leech Seed takes another chunk of Makuhita's HP, I stay in to hit the world's saddest pound, meaning that Patrick needs to take another Vital Throw. That leaves him with 13 HP. Or I guess 30 HP after our held Oranberry and the Leech Seed recovery. But with Makuhita finally asleep, I can switch back to Paul. Our enemy's held Citrus Berry means that we're gonna need some decent sleep luck to win this, but I believe that Paul's got what it takes. We start with a Mega Drain that does a solid chunk of damage, and then Makuhita immediately wakes up and kills Paul with a Vital Throw. To be honest, our little mushroom was probably always going down there, but I was hoping that he'd be able to get at least one more attack off before going down, because now we're in a lot of trouble. Absent-mindedly, I bring Patrick back in before realizing that we can't put Makuhita back to sleep again with another yawn since we only have 1 PP, which as a reminder is the entire premise of this challenge. Sometimes I'm not the brightest. At this point, the best I can do is hope that Sludge gets a poison and that the residual damage takes out Makuhita before he sweeps my entire team. Or Sludge can get a critical hit, bypassing the bulk up defense boosts and knocking out Makuhita for an extremely lucky victory over Brawly. There's only one explanation for that kind of luck, and it's that this run has been blessed by Arceus themselves. I am the prince who was promised. We are unstoppable. We cannot lose. We can't die. Well, except Paul, I guess, but whatever. This is the run. Hey, Flygon. What's up, Garchomp FJ? Come to bask in the glory of the golden run? No, About 30 minutes ago, you gave me this note card with instructions to come interrupt you, but I'm a little confused. It seems to be a sponsorship segue, but there aren't enough details. I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. Did you flip it over? Flip it? Well, that's just lazy. Lazy or creative? No, lazy. Or... This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Yep, I'm using my camera more. It's a thing I've decided to try. Squarespace is an online platform that helps you build and manage your own website, whether it's an online store for your business or a personal blog for your thoughts. Using their all-in-one platform and customizable templates, it's easy for anyone to create professional and polished websites. You know it's true because you can see me saying it. I'm making eye contact. And speaking of eyes, I use Squarespace to create PoppyHG.com, the only destination to find curated pictures of my corgi puppy, Poppy. Poppy is a huge fan of Squarespace's Fluid Engine design system featuring drag-and-drop technology because it means I'm able to quickly fine-tune every single detail of her website. For example, I added a donation button so that site visitors could give Poppy a treat. Squarespace has a ton of other really useful features to get the most out of your website, like analytic information about the traffic of your website, and Squarespace member areas, which can be used to connect with audiences and create exclusive members-only content. So if you're looking to start a website for your business or hobby or corgi, then you should check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your website, you can use my custom link to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to the challenge. As we arrive in Mauville City, another difficult challenge awaits: Watson's electric types. And here to help us with her electric resistance is Phoebe the Oddish, but if all goes according to plan, she won't touch the battlefield. Watson leads with a Voltorb, and I lead with Polly the Mighty Anna. With a bit of luck, we'll be able to take out Voltorb with or Watson will immediately blow up, doing a cripplingly small amount of damage after our Intimidate attack drop. Well, Electrike is out second, so we both take turns exchanging howls. Since I intentionally used the PP of Polly's other moves, she's now free to nail Electrike with a struggle for well over 50%. Shockwave brings us into the yellow, but then after our Oranberry activates, Electrike falls to a second struggle, leaving Watson with his two strongest Pokemon. Magneton is first, so it's off to Peter on a Shockwave, and then immediately out into Paulina on a Whiffed Supersonic. Fake Out does a tiny bit of chip because why not? Then Magneton nails our bulky girl with a Shockwave before we clap back with a Vital Throw for the clean one-hit KO. All that's left is Manectric, who sets up a Howl as Paulina nails him with a Sand Attack. I bring Peter in as Manectric goes for another Howl, and then would you guess that he goes for another Howl on the following turn? But after that, we nail the Yappy Dog with a super effective Mud Shot. And even though we have a Leppa Berry to get back our one power point, Manectric Citrus Berry means another Mud Shot won't get the KO and will then cause Watson to heal. So instead, I click Mud Slap for just a bit of damage, which after we tank a powerful +3 quick attack, gets a freaking critical hit, which sucks because now Watson heals with a super potion, meaning that our second and final Mud Shot also won't get the kill, and Watson will heal again. Nope, never mind. Peter lands another critical hit, instantly winning us the battle. Like I said, we've got Arceus's blessing, and I am the prince who was promised. That's the third gym badge, baby. Now we're off to Northern Hoenn to catch a crapload of Pokemon, many of which are completely useless, but as we head into the fight against Flannery for badge number 4, Pearl the Numel and Pierre the Solrock have joined our otherwise fully water-type team. Flannery sends out her Numel, and I bring in Pepper the Solo Queen. A Bubble Beam drops Flannery's horse with a needless critical hit, bringing in Slugma and triggering our held Leppa Berry. I make a tactical error and go for Water Gun, which doesn't get the kill and lets Slugma set up a light screen. So I decide to run back my brilliant strategy from the first gym by setting up a defense curl as Slugma misses a Smog, and then taking the kill with a rollout on the following turn. With just a few turns, Rollout will be doing massive damage to Flannery's team, but Pepper immediately misses the very next roll into Camerupt, letting her set up a Sunny Day for free. Bummer. Well, with the sun and the light screen up, Bubble Beam does basically nothing, though it's certainly better than the whiffed tackle that Flannery follows up with. And if she's just gonna waste time with tackles, I might as well nail Camera up with some huge power boosted struggles. A few turns later, Flannery heals with a hyper potion. But then a few more turns later, we've gotten Camera back into the red, so I switch out to Peter as Flannery heals again. But with the light screen and the sun gone, we can hit her with a water gun that, believe it or not, lands another critical hit. I'm not sure what Peter's been eating, but whatever it is, it's made him an absolute beast in these last few battles. Oh, how far he's come from missing that first tackle. Torkoal's all that remains of Flannery's team, so after we hit her with a mud shot and she sets up a sunny day, I switch to Pierre, who simply cannot feel Torkoal's fiery love. But fret not, for without the capacity to love, there is not the risk of heartbreak. Pierre lives a life free of the pain, and isolating as it may seem, is it not worse to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all? Anyways, Pierre nails Torkoal with a rock throw and then a confusion to bring her into the red. Unfortunately, we miss our second Lepa Berry gifted rock throw, which allows Torkoal to connect with a third body slam that finally causes a paralysis. After another body slam, we also miss our Psywave, so ultimately I bring in Penelope on one last body slam before finally getting the KO with a water gun and winning us the 4th gym badge. After a quick detour to the desert on Route 111 where I catch a sand shrew named Paxton, I'm immediately thrust into the less pervy half of the Oedipus complex for a chance at winning the 5th gym badge. Norman's a bit tricky without the ability to stall his slacking, but first is the least imposing of his mammalian squad, Spinda. Polly nails him with an Intimidate, followed by a Strength for roughly 50%. A Teeter Dance is rendered ineffective thanks to our held Person Berry, though that does mean we don't have a Lepa Berry to give Polly another Strength. So Bite is our next best option, but it's not enough for the KO, letting Spinda hit us with a Facade, and then get back to full HP with a Hyper Potion. After a Howl to boost our attack, Rock Smash does a little less than 50%, but with the defense drop, after tanking another Facade, we can get the KO with Struggle. Polly's Dark typing immediately brings in Slacking, so it's off to Paulina on a surprisingly massive Facade. A crit there, and we would have been screwed. But now, as Slacking loafs for a turn, we're free to nail him with a massive, super effective Vital Throw for less than 50%? Well, crap. Lepa Berry gives us another Vital Throw PP, but we can't stay in on another Facade here, so I gotta switch out to Polly, who after an Intimidate barely survives the hit. It's becoming more and more likely that this fight is gonna require a sacrifice, but I'm not there quite yet. On Slacking's loafing turn, I can switch back to Paulina, who can then use Fake Out to flinch Slacking on his non-loafing turn. Of course, a Citrus Berry means another Vital Throw still isn't getting the kill, so instead I go for a Rock Smash, which unfortunately fails to get the 50% chance at a defense drop. I bring in Pierre the Loveless on a failed counter, and then hit the king with a Secret Power, which should finally bring him in range of a Vital Throw. Patrick comes in on a counter, we hit him with a Yawn on his loafing turn, and then we switch back to Pierre on the mirrored Yawn. With Slacking now asleep, it's a bit safer to bring in Paulina, but our enemy immediately wakes up and hits a Facade that leaves my timid sumo wrestler with 17 HP. By the skin of her teeth, Paulina lives and Slacking falls. Though now we have to deal with Norman's remaining 2 Pokemon. Vigoroth is moderately walled by Paxton the Sandslash, who trades semi-favorably with a series of random HMs and TMs. In the end, we get the upper hand by critting a Slash for the KO. My crit luck has been pretty ridiculous this playthrough, to the point where I had to make sure Uncle Jimtendo didn't accidentally increase the crit rate of my very real Pokemon Emerald cartridge. As far as I can tell, he didn't. Anywho, with the belly drumming Lanoon last, I bring in Pierre to resist all of his normal type moves. We just barely outspeed, which is great for avoiding flinches from Headbutt. With another critical hit from Confusion, we bring Lanoon down into the yellow, causing Sweet Papa to use his second Hyper Potion. Rock Throw then misses because that's what rock type moves do, but Psywave manages to connect for seemingly the first time in the entire playthrough, which generously does a fantastic chunk of damage. And since Lanoon decided to give the old tummy a quick smack, Pierre is free to finish the battle with Struggle. That right there is 5 badges down. which means that we can make our way to Fortree City and collect 2 more important encounters along the way. A Zigzagoon named Paris, and a Tropius named Paisley. Neither are useful for the fight against Winona though. Instead, I lead with Pascal the Kecleon. But that's actually a mistake, so I immediately swap him out for Paula the Tentacruel on a rinky-dink aerial ace from Winona's Swablu. Surf does a solid chunk of damage, but not as much as you'd think considering my enemy is a frickin' Swablu. After her mirror move turns Surf, our Lepaberry activates and lets us take the KO with a second Surf. This immediately brings in Altaria, who's threatening with an Earthquake, but I'm ready with a speedy quad-effective Ice Beam that leaves Altaria in the red. Doing 60% to Swablu should have been a good indication that Paula isn't exactly the powerhouse I was hoping for. Nevertheless, Altaria just goes for Dragon Dance, and since her Oranberry brings her out of healing range, I can simply switch out to Pierre, who's immune to Earthquake. Altaria then hits us with a Dragon Breath, which paralyzes, but Pierre thankfully breaks through, only to miss a rock throw. We gotta buy this French some prescription glasses because this is getting out of hand. Now, thankfully, with a Lepaberry, we get another chance to take out Altaria, who simply goes for a second greedy Dragon Dance. So Pierre breaks through paralysis yet again, and then manages to go 50-50 on landing their rock throws. Good job, buddy. So proud. Tropius is next, so I bring in Patrick on the first turn of a Solar Beam. Sludge doesn't do nearly enough for the KO, so our sentient stomach does have to eat a shockingly weak critical hit before using his Lepaberry to knock out the prehistoric plant with another Sludge. Skarmory comes in fourth, so after tanking a Steel Wing, Patrick gets off a Yawn. Then I can bring in Pearl the Camerupt on a second resisted Steel Wing, which crits before Skarmory falls asleep and we melt her down with a Flamethrower. So all that's left is Winona's Pelipper. Truly one of the most infuriating Pokemon of all time. With Protect spam and 2 Hyper Potions remaining, there's a non-zero chance that this bozo could stall out my entire team. But that's where Pascal, who knows Thunderbolt, can hopefully save the day. He switches in for free on an aforementioned Protect. But if Pelipper goes for it again, that will instantly burn Pascal's Soul Power Point. Our held Lepaberry will give us another chance, but oh sweet, Pelipper just uses Supersonic, which misses, and then Pascal gets a clean KO. That was shockingly easy. A few confusions and protects, and that could have turned into quite the slog. But with 6 gym badges, we're free to catch a whole slew of new Pokemon as I make my way through the Team Aqua and Magma story beats. Most notable is a Duskull named Percy, who will be important for the Tate and Liza fight. As I make my way through the Team Aqua hideout, I detour to pick up a Master Ball, and then immediately use it to catch Pandora the Electrode. Can't catch me getting hit by a self-destruct. Again. With that encounter checked off, I can now go to New Mauville and guarantee a Magnemity named Padma, who will be a must-bring for both Juan and Wallace's water types. A Sharpedo named Primrose off the coast of Mossdeep City gives me my classic late-game sweeper, and a second Dark-type right in time for the fight against Tate and Liza. This team is tough, but 2 immunities to Psychic-type attacks will go a long way. Against their Claydol and Xatu, I lead with Paisley and Primrose. Xatu outspeeds both my Pokemon to set up a Calm Mind, which is scary, but a problem for later. Right now, I'm focusing on the Earthquaking Claydol. I instantly goof by having Primrose attack with Crunch instead of using Protect as originally planned, because even though Crunch does a ton to Claydol, they're still faster than Paisley and fire off an Earthquake that would have easily killed Primrose with a crit. That was stupid, but I go unpunished as Claydol falls to a Magical Leaf. Solrock comes in next, so fearing a Sunny Day from Xatu, followed by a 1-turn Solar Beam from Solrock, I protect Primrose. Xatu simply uses another Calm Mind though, as Solrock charges their first turn of Solar Beam. Paisley does minimal damage with Razor Leaf to both of our foes before I do a double switch on the following turn. Paisley into Polly, and Primrose into Percy. The former is immune to Xatu's Psychic, and the latter easily eats Solrock's Solar Beam. On the following turn, I switch Percy back to Primrose, who again avoids Xatu's Psychic. Polly then nails Solrock with a Bite to bring them into the red before they set up a Sunny Day. With a Lepaberry on Polly and a Citrus Berry on Solrock, it's safe to stay in, watch Xatu set up another Calm Mind, and then take the KO on Solrock with the Surf and Bite combo. This means that Tate and Liza are now down to just Xatu and Lunatone, who both only have Psychic-type moves as a means of offense. The issue is that Xatu does have Confuse Ray, and we have very limited PP left before we gotta start struggling, which by the way targets randomly in a double battle. The result is that even though Polly and Primrose can't be hit by Xatu and Lunatone, they also can't afford to stay in without risking taking themselves out. But because Xatu and Lunatone have set up approximately 1 million Calm Minds, it's also not safe for any of my other Pokemon to stay in. So what follows is pretty silly. I've got to stall out Xatu and Lunatone by switching between my dark types and my non-dark types. Eventually though, both Xatu and Lunatone run out of Psychic PP, letting my non-dark types safely stay in and take the final KOs. This still takes several minutes since both of our enemies now have +6 special defense from all the Calm Minds, and Lunatone tries to put everything to sleep with Hypnosis, but eventually Peter takes the KO on Xatu with Strength, and after 2 more Hyper Potions on Lunatone, Penelope gets the final KO of the fight with Struggle. That was a messy fight, but ultimately we made it through without any deaths. From here, we gotta head to Sootopolis City for the Super Ancient Showdown, and the final gym badge of the playthrough. After getting Rayquaza to break up the skirmish, I make sure to catch a Wailmer named Prairie and a Spheal named Price. Get it? Per-ice? Anyways, both of these little chunksters will be extremely important against Juan, whose Kingdra is easily our hardest challenge so far. Without an easy way to one-shot him, Kingdra's double team plus rest combo is basically a worst case scenario for this playthrough, since he can very easily stall out the PP of any team I cobble together with just a little bit of good luck. So my plan, stupid as it may seem, is to stall him out in return. First though, I gotta deal with the rest of Juan's team, which is fortunately pretty simple. Thunderbolt from Pandora the Electrode one-shots Lovedis and baits in Whiscash with Earthquake. This gives me a safe switch to Paisley, though annoyingly Whiscash uses Amnesia, which means our Magical Leaf isn't enough for the KO. And since Whiscash actually outspeeds us, he can set up Rain Dance and hit us with a soft Water Pulse before we can get the KO with a Razor Leaf. Celio comes out next, so I switch to Padma on an Aurora Beam, who then takes the KO on the Blubbery Seapup with a Thunderbolt, and then also on Crawdaunt with a Spark. So that quickly brings out Kingdra last. He immediately sets up a double team, though our second Thunderbolt from Alepa Berry manages to connect anyways. That was kind of a waste though, since Kingdra immediately uses Rest and a Chesto Berry to get back to full HP. Our Thunder Wave also connects, giving us the speed advantage to fire off a Tri-Attack that also connects, but with that, Padma's out of moves and Kingdra's at +2 evasion, so time to stall. Since Kingdra only knows Water Pulse and Ice Beam, I can do this by switching between my 3 bulky water types. Prairie and Price both know Rest, which gives us significantly more HP to work with, so it isn't too hard to successfully waste all 10 of Kingdra's Ice Beam PP and all 20 of his Water Pulse PP. And then from there, we can switch around until Kingdra is completely out of PP, forcing him to use Struggle, which will eventually get the KO with recoil damage. After a few turns, Pandora manages to connect with a clutch Thunderbolt, which brings Kingdra into the yellow. On the following turn, I switch to Paisley, who has 1 remaining Magical Leaf PP thanks to her held Alepa Berry. And since Magical Leaf never misses, after eating another struggle from Kingdra, she lets her attack rip, but the stupid seahorse hangs on with like literally 1 HP, which is bad because now Juan will heal. And if you thought that the Tate and Liza fight was sloppy, what happens next is the equivalent of a toddler in a high chair eating spaghetti and meatballs. Even with Paisley landing an extremely lucky Solar Beam, we simply don't really have enough resources to deal with Kingdra. Juan has 1 more Hyper Potion, Struggle isn't doing enough recoil, most of my Pokemon are fully out of PP, and the ones that don't have to connect through 6 stages of evasion boosts. Basically, my plan to stall out Kingdra was extremely dumb. And short of a miracle, there is no way to make it out of this deathless. In fact, there's a very real chance that this Kingdra is going to struggle his way through my entire team and force a late game wipe. As ironic as it would be to lose this challenge to a struggling Kingdra, I'm not ready to give up just yet. With Price out on the battlefield, Juan uses his final Hyper Potion. We then proceed to miss every single one of our struggles until Price falls to just 8 HP. Not a great start, but wanting to conserve price for a potential Elite Four team, unlikely as that may seem at the moment, I switch out to Prairie. At the very least, the original Angel's massive HP stat means that Kingdra takes slightly more chip from the struggles that easily bring her down. This gives me a safe switch to Pandora, who continues to put Pierre the Solrock to shame by connecting with a Spark for a solid chunk of damage. Sadly, their Sonic Boom misses, so as Kingdra struggles his way into a second KO, he remains at roughly 40%. This is looking really bad. I bring in Paula next, who has her full arsenal of moves left, though after an Ice Beam miss, Kingdra manages to connect with a critical hit Struggle. Yes, Struggle can crit, which gives Paula just one more chance to do some damage. And she does. Ice Beam connects. It's not enough to save her from another struggle, but it is enough to ensure that we should be able to just barely win this fight. I bring in Paisley next, so if she wants to live, she has to dodge a crit and connect with her own struggle. Kingdra brings Paisley down to just 14 HP, meaning she's dodged the crit, and then she connects with Struggle, winning us easily the hardest and dumbest battle in the entire run. There are upwards of 1,000,000 ways I could have played that better, but I've got no time to reflect because we're off to the Pokémon League, baby. And boy, is this gonna be tricky. There are a handful of very bulky Pokemon in this Elite Four. Anything that isn't one-shot takes up valuable power points that we can't afford to waste. Pokemon like Phoebe's Dusclops, Glacia's Walrein, Drake's Kingdra, great, a second Kingdra, yay, Wallace's Milotic, and Wallace's stupid double-teaming Ludicolo all have the potential to waste a ton of PP and put me in a very dangerous position. So it's those beefcakes that are on the top of my mind as I scramble to put together my final team, all leveled up to the level cap of 55 to match Drake's Salamence. Here's what I came up with. First up is Pelipper, almost exclusively to give me a reliable answer into Drake's Flagon and Salamence. With enough speed EVs, we can outspeed both and nail them with quad-effective Ice Beams. Next is Paulina, pre-burn to activate her Guts ability. She's our check against Glacia's bulky Ice types. Paisley the Tropius is my answer into Wallace's Whiscash and Ludicolo, being able to one-shot the former with Stab Grass moves and hit the latter through his double teams with perfectly accurate Aerial Ace and Magical Leaf. Padma is decked out with electric moves to give us the best chance against Wallace's army of bulky water types. Shockwave gives me another answer into Ludicolo, and with Padma's massive special attack stat, Spark should be enough to one-shot Gyarados without wasting Thunderbolt PP. Thunder is really just a Hail Mary, so let's hope it doesn't come to that. Primrose the Sharpedo is our 5th member because if you're going into the late game of Emerald without a Sharpedo, you're basically throwing. This thing is fantastic into Phoebe's Ghost types, Drake's Dragon types, and even Wallace's Tentacruel once I teach her Earthquake, which I definitely won't forget to do. So the final member of the team is Paris the Lanoon with a moveset of Belly Drum and Shadow Ball. You'll see why in a little bit. But there you have it. That's what we've got. Without any further ado, it's time to see if these 6 single PP Pokemon can make it to the Hall of Fame and become champions of the Pokemon League. Sydney is the first member of the Elite Four and also the easiest. Primrose drowns his lead Mightyena with a Surf, immediately bringing out Cacturne, who then swiftly falls to an Ice Beam. Without another PP on Ice Beam, Primrose hits Sydney's 3rd Pokemon Shiftry with a Crunch before he sets up an obnoxious double team. So I simply bring in Paisley, who can get the KO with an Aerial Ace. 4th is Absol, so I switch to Padma on a Swords Dance, and then get the KO with a Thunderbolt. Then, to close things out, our Lepaberry granted 2nd Thunderbolt also one-shots Crawdaunt. Good game, Sid. Phoebe is 2nd, and here's where things get a little tricky. She leads with a Dusclops that almost always starts with a Protect, which will instantly waste the PP of one of our moves if we hit into it. So, by leading with Paris, I can simply set up a Belly Drum to get to +6 attack on the turn Phoebe uses Protect. Then, with a Shadow Ball, we can cleanly take the KO on the following turn. And since I didn't teach any other moves to Paris, she can now hit the rest of Phoebe's Ghost types with +6 struggles, which are enough to kill Bayonet and Sableye in one shot. But those KOs were actually damage rolls, and as Phoebe's 2nd Bayonet comes in, I decide it's not worth risking the low roll again, so I switch out to Padma on a soft Facade. Thunderbolt gets another clean kill on Bayonet, which leaves Phoebe with her 2nd Dusclops. But since she knows Earthquake, we've got a free switch to Penelope, who can hit Dusclops hard with a Surf before tanking a remarkably soft Rock Slide. Pelipper's are deceptively bulky, and Dusclops are deceptively bad. But with that, I can switch to Primrose on another Rock Slide, who's now primed to finish off the One-Eyed Ghoul with a crunch and win us the battle. After loading up Paris with a bunch of normal-type TMs and HMs, it's time to face off against Glacia's Ice types, and if everything goes well, this one is all Paulina. Against Glacia's lead Celio, we instantly take the KO with a Facade, which gets boosted to 140 base power thanks to our burn. As Glalie comes in second, our held Lepaberry gives us a second Facade, which once again gets the clean KO thanks to the attack boost from Guts. But as Glacia's second Celio comes out, we gotta resort to one of our other 3 moves. Ideally, I'd like to save Brick Break for the Wall Rain in the back, and at our current HP, Reversal isn't enough for the kill. But Double Edge is a roll to kill and has the added benefit of lowering our HP to the point where Reversal, which gains power at lower HP, should be enough to one-shot Glacia's last Glalie. So that's what I go for, though unfortunately it comes up just short, letting Celio set up Hail. And since Glacia heals on the following turn, I'm forced to use my Brick Break PP to get the KO. In the end, this wasn't the best plan, especially because as Glalie number 2 comes in, the combination of Hail Chip and burn damage brings Paulina from 84 HP all the way down to 42 HP. And with some quick mental math, thanks Biomedical Engineering PhD, I realized that 42 is exactly half of 84, meaning that Paulina will die if she stays in. With literally one more hit point, we would be fine. But I gotta switch, and I decide that the right Pokemon for the job is Padma, who graciously tanks a non-critical hit Ice Beam that also doesn't freeze. Unfortunately, our Thunderbolt isn't enough for the one-shot, so Glalie lives only to immediately explode in a dazzling display of bright lights that put even the most powerful fireworks shows to shame. Time seems to slow down as Padma's HP bar drops, but with a stroke of luck, they live with 14 HP. As Walrein comes out, I brace for the Hail Chip. Is it enough to bring Padma down? Thankfully, no. They live with just 5 HP, meaning that with our held Lepaberry, we can one-shot Walrein with another nasty Thunderbolt, just barely winning the fight against Glacia completely deathless. A crit against Padma or even a slightly higher roll would have been a disaster for my team. With hindsight, as much as it pains me to say it, the safer, smarter, better play was to let Paulina go down. I wasn't punished this time, but things like this always come back around in this life or the next. The final member of the Elite Four is Drake, who leads with another Protect user, this time in the form of Shelgon. So Paris is back for another semi-belly drum sweep. One of the first videos I ever did for the channel was a showcase of how Lanoon can almost always guarantee a solo sweep of the entire Emerald Elite Four. But I've never actually done the strat in any of my videos, since it's admittedly a little anticlimactic. So getting to do a mini version of the sweep here is a nice full circle moment for me. Anyway, Secret Power is enough to one-shot Shelgon, Strength gets the KO on Altaria, and most importantly, Return one-shots Drake's pesky Kingdra before he can set up with Dragon Dance or use Smokescreen. Good riddance. This brings in Flygon fourth, but without any PP left, we gotta switch out since Struggle doesn't get the KO. Fortunately, Penelope is a safe switch in on an Earthquake and then takes the KO with an Ice Beam. And as Salamence comes in, we fulfill Penelope's prophecy by getting another clean KO with our Lepaberry granted second Ice Beam, winning us the battle and defeating the Elite Four. So all that's left is the champion Wallace. 6 water types to take down by any means necessary. Dealing with these bulky beasts will require some sacrifices, but the ends justify the means. So let's do this. Wallace leads with Wailord and I lead with Padma, who starts things off by getting a clean one-hit KO with Thunderbolt. So far, so good, and things continue to look up in a huge way as Wallace sends out Gyarados second. I wasn't expecting that at all, but it's awesome because we can now get a second clean KO. So, as Wallace brings in Whiscash, which is who I was initially expecting, we have a very sizable lead against our opponent. Especially because I can freely switch to Paisley on an Earthquake and then one-shot with a quad-effective Magical Leaf. That's 3 down and 3 to go. but Paisley baits in Wallace's level 58 Milotic, who's too bulky to be one-shot by any of my Pokemon, which means that it's time for a sacrifice, and the candidate is clear. Ever since the Glacia fight, she's been living on borrowed time. Paulina comes in on an Ice Beam, which even with the burn damage does less than 50%, but then she fires off a massive facade into Milotic. For a moment, I'm hopeful that a critical hit will save Paulina's life, but Milo holds on in the red and sends a massive tidal wave down on Paulina that fails to get the KO, but does bring her low enough that burn damage gets the kill. Rest well, Paulina. We'll never forget the sacrifice you made. Padma is free to come in and finish off Milotic with a Thunderbolt, leaving Wallace with just 2 Pokemon. First is Tentacruel, so I switch out to Primrose on a Hydro Pump that barely never kills even with a critical hit. And then, I forgot to teach her Earthquake. That's just embarrassing. And unfortunately, it means that Primrose has to go down here. She can hit a return for over 50%, but then a critical hit Sludge Bomb takes the KO. Wait a minute, needlessly killing a character named Primrose in the last few minutes of a video? That sounds vaguely familiar. Anyways, Paris is now free to come in and take the KO on Tentacruel with a return, so all that's left is Wallace's Ludicolo. I start off with a return, which instantly brings Ludicolo down to 50% as he sets up a dreaded double team. But we came prepared. Paisley switches in on a resisted Surf, and then, with one final Aerial Ace, she takes out Ludicolo, winning us not just the battle against Wallace, but the entire run. And so ends another Nuzlocke challenge. But perhaps more impressive than the victory is that this 1PP challenge video didn't have a single dick joke in it. I fear the same will not be able to be said about the comment section. I want to give a huge shout out to the creator of this mod, Viperio. Links to learn more about their work are in the description down below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. If you had a good time, it'd be great if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. Or don't, I don't know. But I do know that you should check out my Patreon, which is the best way to support the channel and to make sure I can keep doing what I'm doing. I really want to invest some more time in the Patreon this year, so now's a great chance to check it out and make some suggestions for additional content you'd like to see. Stay tuned for more Nuzlocke videos, and until then, remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit.